Live and let live, okay?
Yeah.
But you had folks on the left that were introducing some things when we got in the whole transgender issue, and they were talking about bathrooms, or they were talking about males transitioning to females and competing against girls in sports and stuff like that. These
That's
are
less than 1% of the population.
I understand that,
But you know what? Add an error
ridiculous.
in the NFL.
In this video, The View welcomes sports commentator Stephen A. Smith on their show. Stephen A. Smith gives his analysis to Sonny Hostin and the rest of the hosts of The View as to why the Democrats lost the presidential election. Sonny Hostin, to no one's surprise, gets pissy and makes her disagreement known. With that, let's watch Stephen A. Smith give a wake-up call to Sonny Hostin, the other hosts of The View, and the Democrat Party.
You have to take into account, listen, we respect our president, Joe Biden, but here's the reality. He got into office. He promised to be a transitional president, to be a stopgap to pave the way for somebody else to come on board. Into the midterms, it was supposed to be a red wave. It did not happen. The Democrats was flying high. He felt the momentum because he was the incumbent. And instead of leaving, he decided to stay. When he decided to stay, the Democrats were in a quandary because they were expecting him to leave. Now he wants to stay. They're around him. They're seeing the fastball has dissipated to some degree. They're seeing that he's not what he used to be. And what do you do about it? You grease the skids. There's no primary for him to experience. You let him go on stage June 27th, and clearly he was exposed. 3.5 weeks later, he's forced and compelled to step away because donors to the Democratic establishment, they were not going to support that. And then Kamala Harris is inserted. I don't blame her one bit.
Same.
I thought she did a phenomenal job.
Yep.
She went all out.
Oh, Stephen A., I want so badly to like you. If your prediction that Trump was going to win is truly how you felt prior to the election, then you analyzed it correctly. Everything you said about Joe Biden and him suggesting he was going to be a transitional president, and then him deciding to stay in the race, that definitely splintered the Democrat Party. His dismal debate performance certainly sealed his fate, and you're right, donors wouldn't get behind that, so they inserted Kamala. Here's where you start to go way off the tracks, Stephen A. About Kamala, you said, I don't blame her one bit. You don't? You think she did a fantastic job?
Because you were inserted, even though you were the vice president and it was the Biden-Harris administration, you had folks who are independent. I'm not talking about those on the right, and I'm not talking about those on the left, just independents, who said, wait a minute, she didn't experience a primary either. And the last time we saw her in a primary was 4 years ago, and she didn't even make it to Iowa. They used that as an excuse to point to her level of inexperience. Then you got the war in Russia and Ukraine. You got the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Hamas and Hezbollah and all of that stuff. And you had Trump using codes. Look, do you want her? Where is she? Where's the interviews? Where's she showing herself? Where's the tough questions? Where's the interrogation? And he leaned on certain things. And you knew people were going to gravitate to that because right now, as divided as our country is, fear comes associated with that. And because that fear was there, he fed off of it.
Yeah.
Wasn't it a valid concern that you mentioned that there was no primary and how miserably she did in her last primary? What does it mean that Donald Trump was using codes? Are you suggesting it's not reasonable that someone that is running for the presidency of the United States would do interviews and answer actual questions from real people, not just softball interviews? How is that code? How is that fear that he's feeding off of? If there was fear in the voting electorate, it was that we were going to get another 4 years of what we've experienced. So very unimpressed with you thus far, Stephen A. Maybe you can redeem yourself. I'm not hopeful. Let's get back to the video.
And people bought it, hook, line, and sinker.
fashion
And that's why
generally
he's the
do.
president.
And Stephen, let me ask you, because I agree on all counts. There's a lot to unpack of what kind of went wrong for Democrats here. I think a factor is the working class feeling left
Sure.
behind, not reaching out to rural Americans.
Sure.
But what do you identify as what Democrats got wrong? And it seems like you agree Biden maybe should have stepped aside sooner.
He definitely should have stepped aside. I said it a year ago. I was on camera. Everybody was getting on me. I said it a year ago. He needs to step aside.
You took some heat.
You remember, though, that he said, does everybody remember he originally said he was just going to do it for 4
That's
years?
right.
Yeah.
That's what I brought up.
Right. And did you think that once you know who stepped in,
The level of crazy demonstrated by these ladies is off the charts. Whoopi Goldberg was referring to Donald Trump at one point, and instead of saying his name, she said, "You know who." How crazy is she for that? What is wrong with them? Trump derangement syndrome doesn't even describe it. It's so off the charts.
he said, well, there's nobody, we don't have anybody.
Well, the point is that
That's right.
it's not about who you're going up against when you know you're not what you used to be. And see, this is where covering sports puts me at a distinct advantage. I cover people every day where it's time for you to go, but you're holding on and you don't want to leave. People who cover the world of sports are accustomed to seeing that all the time. And so now here you are, to answer your question directly, you are the left, you leaned, and you were a prisoner to the extreme left in a lot of people's eyes. Well, guess what? Most of America doesn't operate on the fringes. Whether you're left or you're right, you're relatively centrist. You believe in compromise, negotiation, working with one another. Nobody gets to get everything they want. The problem is those on the fringes continuously push for you to get everything you want.
Yeah.
They're not about getting things done. They're about getting their way. And if they're not going to get their way, they're about complaining and griping about it, because they understand that when you are operating based off of grievance, that's usually what provokes you to get to the polls. And that is why they don't mind feeling aggrieved and displaying and disseminating that kind of message, because they know people are going to gravitate to that. And as a result, that might get them to the polls, you thinking you're going to get what you want as a result of it. And in
If you like watching videos like these, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
this particular case, the Republicans were right.
So
It
you
worked.
think the Republicans are sort of an extreme fringe party?
No,
at this
I don't.
point?
I don't think that they're an extreme fringe party.
Did you notice when Stephen A. Smith even brought up the Republican Party, dumbass Sonny had to say, "Are you saying the Republican Party is an extreme party?" She wants so badly for other people to get on board with her delusions.
think that they're operating against those they believe are extreme on the left. Like, for example, when you talk about the LGBTQ community, I'm a fiscal conservative and I'm a social liberal. I'm fiscal with my dollars. I ain't apologizing for not wanting to pay high taxes to anybody. I'm not apologizing for that, right? But outside of that, I'm pretty liberal. Live and let live, okay? But you had folks on the left that were introducing some things when we got in the whole transgender issue, and they were talking about bathrooms, or they were talking about males transitioning to females and competing against girls in sports and stuff like that. These
That's
are
less
issues.
than 1% of the population.
I understand that,
But you know what? Add Aaron in the NFL.
but see,
He's being nice, but he knows all of the trans stuff really hurt the left. And again, stupid Sonny says, "That's less than 1% of the population. It's ridiculous." And he makes a point, well, it might be to you and me, which I don't think it is to him. But that's just my guess. But I'll take him at his word, I guess. But he said it isn't for you and me, but it was for a lot of Americans. Well, they don't have all the information then.
but I think that's where the mistake is made.
Yeah, 'cause-
You're saying it's ridiculous. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
But most of the voters out there don't think like that.
But
their
that means they
attitudes-
don't have the information.
Okay, but 90% of the voters don't have the information. If you're out there busting your tail to make ends meet and to pay your bills, and you're going to work every day, and you got a family to take care of, and you're in New York City, you're getting stuck 2 hours of your day, you're stuck in traffic. You understand? You got a whole bunch of stuff to go through. You don't have time to know what you and I know.
Maybe you need to
and
listen to the
others.
news when you're in traffic.
Well,
then.
again,
maybe
I agree
not.
with
Not
that.
be uninformed.
Or you listen to stuff that's going to take you away from the things
Yeah.
that brings
Stress
down
them
your
out.
spirit. And that's unfortunately what most voters are doing.
Let me ask you this. How you want to speak?
No.
Sorry. Sure. Because Howard Stern says that he wasn't confident that the country was ready to elect.
Stephen A. goes on to talk about something that I talk about all the time, which is people have lives. You're trying to take care of your family. You're trying to do a good job at work. You are trying to contribute to your community. You're trying to be a good citizen. You're trying to raise good kids. You have so many responsibilities, every American. And not exactly the words she said, but the tone and her demeanor when she said, well, if they don't have all the information, maybe they should be listening to the news on the radio while they're in traffic. She looks down on working people so much. We've seen her on other episodes talk about how the uneducated voted for Trump. If you don't have a college degree, to her, you are lower than dirt. And don't get it twisted, we're all lower than dirt to her if we're not multimillionaire liberal elite status. But I thought that little comment was so telling of how she looks at the working class of this country, as well as the type of person that she is, which we all know is awful. Let's get back to the video.
The first female president, because he knows, quote, how men talk behind closed doors about us. What do men say about us behind
Well,
closed
first of
doors?
all, here's the deal. I respectfully disagree with Howard Stern, only from the standpoint that I wish he had been more specific. Why don't you say white men? Because let me tell you something about black men. We love our mamas.
I know that.
We love, and we revere black women. And when we're trifling, we know it's us. It's not them.
Right, yeah,
You
I
understand?
understand. I
So
do.
when he's saying that, okay, well then let's talk about white men. We have a white power structure that still exists in this country today. I understand the white populace in this country was over 85% at one time. It's now dipped to about 57.4%.
Yep.
The white power structure is still in place. So when we talk about misogyny, when we talk about chauvinism, when we talk about women not necessarily being empowered, well, who's in a position of power to surrender some of that power? It's white men. So I think that when Howard Stern was talking, I can't speak to what white men are thinking. I can tell you this much. Black men, we revere women.
Yeah.
We don't have any problem looking at a woman as a leader.
First of all, I don't give an F what Howard Stern says about anything. He's irrelevant and washed up now, and he's become every single thing that he used to rail against as his celebrity was growing. And why does Stephen A. Smith say Howard Stern should talk for white men? How about Howard Stern talk for Howard Stern? Why even bring up black or white? And yeah, Stephen, I've never heard black men say anything negative about women in general, especially not in music or anything. So, boy, you sure got us there. And then you had to go down this stupid white power structure rabbit hole and said that the men that need to give up some of their power is white men. So what should men do, Stephen? Start stepping down from their jobs and insisting that they're given to women? What are you talking about? Oh, so infuriating. I said at the beginning of this, I want to like Stephen A. Smith, but how can you listening to this garbage? Well, that's it for this video. Let us know in the comments if Stephen A. Smith, not whether you agree with him or not, if he made one single good point that wasn't insulting an entire group of people. Good Lord. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.